And I walk out into the field and I start rising up into the air. And I look up and there's an orange cigar-shaped cloud that's got to be a mile long. And I keep ascending toward the cloud, and we go into the cloud. And I wake up in the bed the next morning, and I couldn't wait to go back. And so not knowing what this was, it was just cool, right? It was like I was with family that was beyond this world and was so cool to hang with that I was just excited. And of course, that was from the time I was 8 to 10. At 23, I'm walking through a metaphysical bookstore in Muncie, Indiana. This book falls off the shelf in front of me. Nobody else around. And the cover's open on the floor. And I walk over and I pick it up, and it's Ruth Montgomery's Strangers Among Us. And the first paragraph that I read, paraphrased, as the most common UFO contactee experience in the Midwest during the late 50s and early 60s was the orange cigar-shaped cloud. When I re-entered my body, I instantly knew that we are all cosmic consciousness condensed into form, just unaware. What really struck home was the Vedas. Now, the Vedas are 15,000-year-old Sanskrit poems. So these were translated into English. But essentially what the Vedantic philosophy is that we're all divine threads incarnate, connected to source, capable of God consciousness. Now, what's that mean? We're capable of living in harmony with everything else. Extraterrestrials travel light years at speeds that are incredible that we don't even know how, right? Well, it's a bioengineered function of their ability to travel using machines and thought. Well, in order to travel like that, your vibratory rate has to be massively high, which means that there can be absolutely no malevolence from them. We're the only ones we need to worry about. They're all saying, hey guys, wake up, we're here, but we can't help yet because you're not unified.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Kotodama Podcast. My guest today is Zen Benefiel. I'm so excited he's here. He is basically the founder of Be the Dream, which is an organization dedicated to guiding individuals and organizations from chaos to clarity. He's also an expert and a coach and a mentor. He's a guest speaker. He's an author of more than 40 plus self-published books. He's a podcast host of One World in a New World. And he's also the founder of Planetary Citizens, which he just explained to me is not a movement, it's an activity. Welcome to the show, Zen. I'm so excited. Thank you.
John, thank you so much for the invitation. This is going to be a really wonderful conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. You're a great host.
Okay, Zen, we just talked a little bit about your name. And, I'm in Japan. Zen is a thing here. Can you just shortly explain to people why you changed your name?
It is. Well, I didn't particularly change it. I had to acquiesce to it. I was orphaned and adopted as a kid. And then I think I was 31, a friend of mine and I were sitting out in my backyard after full moon meditation in June of that year. And we had a really deep conversation, and it felt quiet, like some do, right? Or most do at some point. And I just closed my eyes and I had this question: who am I? And it was silent, right? I asked it within, no verbal whatsoever. And I hear his chair move, and I open my eyes up. I turn to look at him and lock eyes immediately. First words out of his mouth: you are Zendor. Now, how does that happen, right? And then at the same time, with my second sight, it clicks on, eyes open. I see a starscape with a huge stone arch doorway and a thick wooden door slowly opening towards me. And I hear, door to what is? And I'm like, oh, come on, really? I have enough weird shit in my life. I didn't need more. Well, a couple of years later, I had the opportunity, and I just put it on the shelf for a while. I told him what I saw and heard, and he was amenable to that. He's kind of one of those weird ones, too, that is open to other things. And then a couple of years later, I had the opportunity to produce and host a public access TV show. We called it One World, and we were sponsored by the Christown Lions Club. And I used Zendor as a subheading. My given name's Bruce. And so I had Bruce Benefiel, and then underneath it, Zen door in quotes, kind of a door to what is, because that was the essence of the show. And then about 6 shows in, one of the guys on the crew called me Zen one night, and it just cascaded from there. I fought it for a little bit because it was different, and yet it fit. So why not? And it also gave me a goal to live by, right? Because everybody, when you hear Zen, you expect this kind of attitude.
Wow. I mean, I have heard a lot of people who, had kind of a spiritual awakening, or some sort of people who went through extreme things and who have then decided to change their name according to it. I always find the concept of names a little bit, I don't know, alien. It's kind of weird to me that all of us have a name, and it's just something that, our parents decided, and somehow people think,
Yeah, it's a label that we can use to identify each other in the realms of cosmic intelligence or universal truth or whatever you want to call it. There are no names. It's vibration, right? We recognize each other by resonant fields as opposed to names. And because you feel,
yes.
right? You meet somebody, doesn't matter what the name is, you feel something, right? You feel a kinship, you feel, pushback, or, it's across the spectrum, right? Well, those deep connections that you have with people, then you have the opportunity to recognize that, oh, there's something here. Maybe I should open my mouth up and talk about it. How often do we do that? How often do you see somebody across the room, right? And all of a sudden you lock eyes. Well, that's a frequency exchange. It's like Tom Campbell talking about the data streams that you have available as an avatar. So right now you're focused on that data stream. You don't even know it, but there's something within you and something within that other person that connected you for that moment. How often, and I know everybody has those things happen, and how often do you actually step into it and go talk to the person as opposed to just sloughing it off and not thinking about it at all? Well, those are breadcrumbs, that the subtle ones that we get in life, that when we pay attention to, it can open up some amazing pathways, relationships, collaborations, job opportunities, all those kinds of relationships, right? So those are the types of things that, as a Zen guy, right, you learn to pay attention to. You learn to be still, observe, and then where your attention, intention, and interaction take place is what continues the manifestation, because it's what you're focused on. Hopefully, you approach it with good intention, right? I mean, everybody, in my opinion, we all just want to love and be loved, right? That's the core of every religion. So, how do you do that? How do you behave that way when you're not really feeling like it?
Yeah. Is that kind of what's the base of your Be the Dream organization, where you help people?
Well, originally, Be the Dream, I started it in 1988 as well, right? I was working in the aerospace industry in charge of $7 million a month in shipments, 800 part numbers. It was huge. I had the largest goal in the department. It was 35 people. And what I saw was that the way I behaved with others, treating them like I wanted to be treated, I rose to the top of the production charts and was at or above goal every month, even as the youngest person in the department. So there was a couple of supervisors that came to me one day and asked me what I was doing. I thought I was going to get chastised, right? Usually have supervisors show up at your cubicle, it's because you've done something wrong. And so they looked at my face and was like, no, you're cool, right? We just want to know how you're doing your job because you're here. And I had no clue, right? And so I said, well, it's just how I treat people. It's interpersonal skills. And then it dawned on me that, there's a bridge between best business practices and best spiritual practices. And that's how I founded Be the Dream, was to bridge those worlds effectively, however that was going to roll out to be. Because at the time I had no clue exactly how to do it. I just saw the need.
So when you say, I mean, when it says that you help people from chaos to clarity, for example, like what does that mean? Who are your types of clients and how do you help them get there? Because I often feel like life can be so chaotic. And a lot of my viewers, by the way, are quite young people. And I think we often grow up in a society, I don't want to go too deep into it, but the school system, the university is all so confusing. I just don't know. A lot of people just don't know who they are, what they want to do. Is that kind of the stuff you help people with, or can you explain a bit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a being inside of you that just wants to get out, right? So I help that process. Now, for instance, you know, um, I work with executives, I work with spiritual seekers, I work with managers, right? In the job situation, especially if you're in transition, right? Or you're figuring out that you finally figured out that where you're at doesn't fit for you. And so you got to start looking for something else that resonates with you instead of the cacophony that you feel at work. And this usually comes from a deep sense as opposed to the thinking about it, because your experience is a sensory one. It's not a thinking one. So feeling that urge to move, then you got to figure out how, right? That's where I come in to help figure out your skill sets, what are cross-referenceable, how you can apply those in other realms, figuring out what your dream might be the dream, right? We all have one, so maybe it's time you started yours, and then we work on the process to actually create action plans that bridge the inner and outer activity, right? Because there's an inner practice that goes on simultaneously. Because your inner life is what dictates your outer experience. So when you begin to get your thoughts straight and you get out of the chaos, and chaos, by the way, are patterns we don't recognize yet because we're not self-aware enough to see them. So that self-awareness grows over time. And I've noticed in the decades, right? I'm 68, almost 70, right? So I've been through many decades and I see a certain maturation process in each decade of our lives. It varies a little bit, but we learn certain things at certain times of our life because we don't have the life experience or the curiosity to actually inquire deeper of our own life experience and the whys, right? And that brings up those chaotic patterns that we often have that keep getting in the way. A lot of them self-sabotage. You have 70,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are probably self-deprecating. Well, how do you still those self-deprecating thoughts and let the more pure ones through? One of the methods that I use is really simple, is putting your fingertips together and feeling your heartbeat in your fingertips as you breathe and allowing yourself just to be present with your breath while you're feeling your heartbeat. Well, in your feeling now, you're out of your head. So you've separated yourself from that cacophony, at least momentarily. And by being able to practice that and stay in that place, then what's inside that's better for you begins to emerge because it's clearer thinking. You got choices that you can make. And the more self-aware you are, the better choices you can make. There's all kinds of techniques and questions and they're conversations and in those conversations through the questions that I ask, it allows the person to explain where they are, and then I can listen deeply and respond and reflect from that place and asking more questions to get them to dive deeper and self-explore. Because it's not about me telling them or advising them or consulting with them. They got their own answers. It's about me asking the right questions to pull those answers to the surface. And that's pretty true with everybody, whether it's an executive or, career transition or a spiritual seeker. They all have the same pattern. They just are slightly different in their application.
Yeah, so would you say that people, you said, people have these answers all within them, but I think a lot of people who are not used to, meditation or like self-searching and like feeling within themselves, how do people start doing that, without it being so deep and scary?
Well, they can start with just learning how to meditate, and that's simply just sitting and breathing and watching your thoughts, not following them. And eventually you'll get to a place where you stop thinking, because when you try not to think, you're probably going to think more,
Yeah, that's
right?
it.
That's the paradox, right? So, because what are you thinking about? Not thinking. So that you're thinking about thinking. So when you can just breathe and relax, sometimes, there's a mantra you can use. I breathe in I and out M in that process, right? If I notice my thoughts going into poor place, I'll put it that way, I'm practiced long enough that I can recognize that, stop them, replace it, or just simply breathe and have that inner voice, or even sometimes I vocalize I am. And it's a really powerful place to be in. And it's simple, right? Now, to give you an example of what some might go through, we were talking about spiritual awakenings earlier. Mine happened when I was 18 in pre-med. And it was in between first and second quarter. I was living in the honors dorm. And I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I was distraught. And so much so that I actually hit my knees and prayed. And I'd grown up in a Christian background, so this is one of the things that I did. I still do, right? Um, and my prayer was, Father, I want to know what truth is, and I'm willing to die for it if necessary. And I meant it. That was on a Saturday night. The following Tuesday, 11/11/1975, I came back from class and was doing my afternoon meditation in between study or school and studies. And I'm laying across my dorm room bed listening to Journey's first album. And in between the vocals and the vamp, I hear this voice I've been familiar with since a child. I mentioned I was orphaned and adopted earlier. When I found out I was adopted, I had one remaining question, and that was, if I have a father and mother in heaven, can I talk to them? And it turns out I could. The voice came to me a few weeks later and has been with me ever since. That's a little nerve-wracking for a young boy. So this same voice called me by name, Bruce, and said, are you willing to die for what you believe in? And in that instant, my first thought was Christ consciousness. I checked in. It felt a little empty. I wasn't sure why, didn't question it. I moved on to cosmic consciousness. That felt full. So I said yes. And it talk about impeccable timing. As soon as I said yes, there was a guitar riff sound like a rocket ship taking off, and I get a tug from my solar plexus, and I pop out of body. I'd had plenty of OBEs prior to, so I was really comfortable with it. But anyway, I popped out of body. I turned to look at my body laying across my dorm room bed, turned back to look where I was going, and before I can get turned around, I was engulfed by white light. And it had this pure, effervescent, iridescent, high-pitched sensation. Then I realized I was thinking and I was analyzing it. And I was like, woohoo, I'm thinking, I can't be dead. Wow, is there more? And because there was an individuation and yet a feeling of collective consciousness there. All there is, right? Infinite intelligence. And yet I was part of it, but still individuated. So after the question, I felt a movement, and I'm in an indigo background with points of light surrounding me. I knew the points of light were points of consciousness, whether in body or not. I wasn't sure because I knew I wasn't. I had a sense that they were somehow. And once I had that series of thoughts, then the voice picked back up. And it blew me away and still rules my life today. It says, these are those that you are to work with in order to facilitate a new world order. Now, at that time, this meant harmony among people and planet to me.
Yeah.
Then, so the voice, keeps going. It says, know this to be true. It will happen it will happen in your lifetime. Know this to be true. Your
Wow.
path will be full of trials and tribulations. Have faith and trust that everything you need will be there at its appointed time. Trust and allow. And then I felt another rush of energy, and I'm back in my body, still eyes closed, but I'm taking a gulp of air, right? I timed it later as 2 minutes and 42 seconds, and I was gone.
Wow.
At that point, when I re entered my body, I instantly knew that we are all cosmic consciousness condensed into form, just unaware. And so 50 years has been, okay, how do I explain all this?
Yeah.
Now, what I found shortly thereafter, because I started researching at the university, right? So I spent a lot of time in the library going through all kinds of literature trying to identify corroboratory information from my experience, right? To explain what the hell had just happened to me. And the that I found, there were several that kind of hinted towards it, but what really struck home was the Vedas. Now, the Vedas are 15,000-year-old Sanskrit poems. So these were translated into English. But essentially, what the Vedantic philosophy is that we're all divine threads incarnate, connected to Source, capable of God consciousness. Now, what's that mean? We're capable of living in harmony with everything else, right? That doesn't mean that we're, you know, controlling everything, or that we have this creator capacity that now we can control everything around us. Not it at all. It's just the opposite, right? It allows you to blend in and find your own niche harmonically through vibratory realms, as opposed to pushing and pulling energy because your ego wants to do shit. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a distinction. And yet, where we get caught up, and I notice this in my coaching too, we want to push and pull energy to get what we want. That's natural
Mm.
until you find that these patterns that keep coming back repeat themselves, and what you resist persists. So until you start looking at yourself and asking, okay, why is this pattern here? How am I responsible for this? Because nobody else is. It's just you, right? The Mayans have a phrase called In la Quech a la King. And what it means is, I am another you, and you are another me, right? And we are, right? We're all individuations of the one, because that's all there is just the one. And we are here to love and be loved and learn how to work with each other. That's our next level of evolution as a planetary civilization, which is what Planetary Citizens is about.
I love that. And when you talk about these old scriptures, I think a lot of those religions have actually, the ultimate origins of it are all the same and the same thing in different words. And even
Absolutely.
and even in Japan, in Shintoism, it's basically like God is in everything. It's in a stone, it's in a tree, it's in nature, and then that's kind of
Right.
to me, it's the same thing as in
Well,
Buddhism. Yeah.
it's funny. I made a mistake. I'd interviewed Dr. Irvin Laszlo. Some of your guests may know who that is. He was 90 at the time. He's known as the grandfather of systems thinking. He's nominated twice for the Nobel Peace Prize. He was a Hungarian pianist prodigy initially, and he got studying consciousness, so he started writing about it. And now he's just amazing. And so we were having a conversation, and with my experience, I was thinking, oh, wow, this is a great guy to ask questions of, right? Well, in my infinite egoic wisdom, I said, in quantum physics, we have discovered that the quantum physicists say we're 99% space and 1% material. And he says to me, I would say we're 100% energy. And
Yeah.
that just rang so true. It resonated in my entire being, because it just made sense, right? And now with the
Yeah.
quantum fields and all these kinds of things, we recognize, yeah, we're all vibration. We're all really non-material beings, but we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So we've been able to craft these biomachines to live and have our being on a planetary surface so that we can evolve more. Because this is a creator experiencing creation through us.
Yes. Yes, I love that. And I want to circle back to this coaching thing, because I'm thinking, like, do you think the purpose? I think that's something that a lot of people think about. What's my purpose here? Especially now with AI and jobs kind of also disappearing, because we will have more time with AI. So the question is to you:
Absolutely.
is our purpose something we're born with? Do you think it's something we create along the way? Do you think we have a choice as a human to choose our purpose, or is it something that's predestined?
Really a great question. From my experience and what I've been able to ascertain, there's a dualistic, like the DNA helix, right? There's two sides of the story. One's spiritual, one's material. So the genetic code within us that we all have, right? We're individuals as different as a snowflake. And then we have a spiritual vibration. And depending on the level of spiritual vibration we're able to attain, unlocks the genetic codes for higher living, right? And we can choose to be a ditch digger and be totally happy with that. Or we can choose to ascend to another place and look for more ways to affect change in a positive way. And even the ditch digger can do that by how he does his job, not necessarily what he does. This is the whole thing about moving from 3D to 5D. A lot of people are talking about. I know you've heard about it too. Well, the structures aren't going to change. It's how we interact that will. And this kind of leads into the whole philosophy of spiral dynamics. We mentioned that before. Spiral dynamics was a 40-year study of two research psychologists, Beck and Graves, and they were able to ascertain the level of behavior of a society on a scale, and they use a colored scale. But depending on the behavior of that planetary civilization, they rank it on that scale from unitive consciousness, which is where everybody is awakened and realizing, yes, we can and must work as one. And then there's the lowest, which is where you fight over resources.
So, are we in, where are we there? Because people say the earth is splitting, some people are going down the sphere route, other people are ascending and going, have spiritual awakenings. Do you think we're
Well, that's going to be an individual experience, right? Because that's all there is, and your experience is your truth. That's all you can go by, regardless of whatever scriptures you're reading or books you're studying or movies you're watching. Your experience is your truth. So honor that. Now, in this process, one of my good friends, I've been so fortunate to have met wonderful people, great people. Jose Arguez, who brought the Mayan calendar out in the 70s. He became a friend. I met him as I was producing. And we had great conversations about the calendar and the segue between ages, between the Piscean and the Aquarian age. And according to the Mayan calendar, there's a 50-year window in the segue between ages, right? It's like the liminal space between the two, where growth happens, preparation for the next. So in that 50-year window, 2012, the winter solstice, was the midpoint. And from that place, so what he said, and I agree, from 87 to 2012, there was an escalation of consciousness, awareness, and you can see it in books, tapes, movies, people talking, right? Music. It all showed this curve that was probably parallel to the information curve at the time, almost straight up, right? Then at 2012, what's going to happen once you're aware? Now you're walking with this everywhere. And so your vibration affects everything subtly. So what happens? everything that doesn't resonate with a higher vibratory rate will come to the surface for re-examination. So the following 10 years, 13 now, we're in that place of examining the dysfunctional systems. And they've all come to the surface for view, right? We're all painfully aware of them. What do? Well, we continue to ask the questions of how do we create the world that works for all as a new normal? And that's a tough question because there's so many levels and systems and people and governments and right. And that's just on the planet. And we do have some help from above, not just spiritually. We've also got others who have been visiting here for quite a long time. I know because they visited me starting as a kid. And so I've got this other part of my life I don't talk about a whole lot because people push back almost immediately. Right?
I know people are not ready for the extraterrestrial conversation. I'm just over here like, we have literally government officials already telling us that happened, and people are still questioning, is there life out there? Like, yes, and for thousands of years they've been here.
Think about this too.
Yeah, tell me.
On the vibratory, not to cut you off, but it's important, right? And it's important. There's no but. In that process, considering the, what do you call them, ultradimensionals, multidimensionals, extraterrestrials, whatever, they travel light years at speeds that are incredible that we don't even know how, right? Well, it's a bioengineered function of their ability to travel using machines and thought. Well, in order to travel like that, your vibratory rate has to be massively high, which means that there can be absolutely no malevolence. Right? Let me repeat that. No malevolence from them. We're the only ones we need to worry about. They're all saying, hey guys, wake up. We're here, but we can't help yet because you're not unified.
Yes, Zen, I had this conversation with someone the other day where I was like, I believe most creatures out there are benevolent. Benevolent is the good one, right?
So beneficent, good one. Malevolent is the bad one.
Yeah. So, and this person was like, how do you know? Maybe all of them are, want to destroy us. And I'm like, if they would want that, I think we would already not exist. Like that's kind of how I see it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
if they wanted their tech and their awareness, their abilities, man, we'd be gone in a heartbeat. That's not who they are.
Yes.
They're nourishing. They're family. We don't get that yet. These are our ancestors.
Yes, I love that so much.
Right? I have a conversation with Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Dr. Mitchell was the 6th man on the moon. He was the pilot for the Lunar Excursion Module. I met him same time I met Jose Arguez. And we had several conversations. It was like two brothers talking, right? Instant trust with each other, went deep. And he had enough trust in me that he says to me one day, he says, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody till after I'm dead. This is 97. He died in 2016. So I'm not violating, right?
Yes.
But he says, from the time we left the command module all the way down to the surface of the moon, there was a metallic silver cylinder spiraling around the LEM. It is, I couldn't tell its size because I just had that little triangular window to see out of. Couldn't tell if it was piloted or it was remote from the surface. What I could tell was it was nothing from Earth. So according to some legends, they've been there a long time.
Yes. Just wanted to ask you, do you know Bashar?
I stood on stage about 6 feet away from him. Yes.
Wonderful. I'm a big fan. I love Bashar. And so, Bashar always
a lot of great things to say.
Yeah, he always talks about how the moon was altered by extraterrestrials to help with the frequency of like of humanity. So I
That's
find that
not
interesting.
the case. The story that I heard came through Native American lore. And the story is that long time ago, right, billions of years ago, millions at least, there was a planet that had at that point, a type 2 civilization. Now, this is a reference to the Kardashev scale, right? Type 1 manages the energy of the planet and uses it for everything. A type 2 uses the solar system. A type 3 uses galactic energy. So they're travelers, right, outside the solar system. So this planet, the civilization there, had come to Earth, built the pyramids, and they were going to use the pyramids to channel electromagnetic energy back to their planet because they were running out of energy. And the calculations were off. Well, there was a type 3 civilization that was watching this. And so they created the moon as an escape pod because of an impending disaster that they knew was going to happen because the calculations were off. Well, what happened because of the calculations being off? The energy basically caused the planet to explode, and it became our asteroid belt. And the moon ended up here. Now, according to Native Americans, it wandered through the solar system and finally arrived here and has been here ever since. Well, so it's hollow, right? According to that. So there's people inside that this was an escape pod. Now, strangely enough, if you look through research, there have been projectiles that have been fired into the moon to see if it is hollow or not. And sure enough, there's a ring. Now, with these cylinders that were there that Edgar Mitchell witnessed, about a decade later, I heard Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong saw the same kind of cylinders standing upright on a platform just beyond the dark side of the moon. But they couldn't talk about it, right? Gag order. They can't talk about any of that. Edgar took a chance talking to me about it because if I had said anything and it got out, not only his reputation, but his retirement, maybe even his life, would have been in jeopardy because it was a strict, don't talk about order. And he felt like he could trust me, and I was honored with that, and there was no way I was going to violate it. So there's another alternative story that offers possibility. I'm not going to say it's 100% true. It sure does explain a lot of things in the solar system and why we have an asteroid belt where a planet ought to be.
Yes, and a lot of these ancient, I mean, even the native, I mean, the tribe you were talking about, right? These people, I feel like they have this ancient wisdom that they know about things that we forgot about, and I feel
Well,
like
how do you say that?
and I think
Sorry,
it,
stuff you say things. It's like I get triggered to talk.
I know, I love it. No, it's amazing. You're such a storyteller. It's just like I think there's so much knowledge out there if you look into this, and a lot of these things,
Gotta
a lot
look.
of this ancient knowledge lines up with what we are slowly discovering through science. For example, quantum physics and even astrophysics and like a lot of things we do not know yet to be proven, right? But what people can do is, I often think, similar to what Bashar often says, is like, it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. Does it help you? Does it work? Is this something that rings true to your soul? Like I do a lot of shamanic work, healing work. And so it doesn't really matter to me if people think it's really, me and like getting my splits of my soul back to my body. It doesn't matter because it works. And so, because people can sometimes obsess over this, what is fact and what is not factual, and like what's the science behind it. It doesn't
It
actually.
resonates or not. I think what you can utilize and leave the rest for further questioning and
Exactly.
clarity.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think it comes with wisdom and age as well, often, to realize that it's okay not to know, and it's okay to just not trying to,
Better to not know
yes.
because
Okay,
you
I
ask
love
better
that.
questions. You become curious, right? And that's how you find stuff out. You're
Yes, yes,
curious.
yes. But I want to interrupt you there because I think a lot of people, there's all of this big information, extraterrestrials or like, what is the purpose of life? Can we kind of come back to this, to ourselves, because this is where our power lies in this world, because I think we all have an incredible amount of power, and we all have an impact on the whole universe. That's what I believe. It doesn't matter how small or big it seems. So I think, and I wanted to ask you basically, how can people know, when we talk about meditation and going into these deep I guess knowings and feeling into oneself, how can people know the difference between intuition and what is really true for them, or just an imagination or like a false feeling?
Sure. Imagination plays a part, but if you're seeing something, you're experiencing it, then it's real, right? No matter what it is, it's real for you in that moment. Now, there's an ancient indigenous philosophy, and they euphemistically call it the three-brain system, and it's built into us, right? First brain's the gut, the intuition, right? Now we know from science that there's billions of neurosensors in the gut. So we sense vibrations first. Then we come up to the second brain, which is the heart, which is where we distill, is it desirable? Is it undesirable? And figure that spectrum out. Then we toss that up to the quantum computer that's sitting on top of our shoulders so it makes better decisions because it has more clear information, because the body is a transceiver, right? This is one of the things I started mentioning the Hopis earlier. Their tradition, they claim that there were 7 ships with 7 sisters from the Pleiades that came and visited them. And they gave them blue corn and tobacco. Blue corn for the physical sustenance, and tobacco to take grandfather's spirit into the body. Now, there's a place on the reservation, I've been there on numerous occasions, but it's called the Landing Place. And it's a huge rock formation that has about a 30-yard wide, 100-meter or 100-foot wide opening to the east. And then there's a circular opening in the center of this rock formation. They're a couple hundred feet high, right? And all along the outside of this are petroglyphs, thousands of them. And they depict all kinds of creatures. Well, this area inside of that is what they call the landing place where the 7 ships landed. And it's not too far from Prophecy Rock, which is what they also, the wisdom that they imparted, and that's etched in stone now.
Wow. I mean, when you talked earlier about you had personal contact with extraterrestrials, are you talking about the Pleiadians?
Oh, I've had all kinds of races. It started as a kid. I began having out-of-body experiences at 7, and then around 8, I woke up. This is 1965. I woke up in the corner of my bedroom. A strange place to wake up, right? So I'm watching my physical body get out of my bed, open my window, climb out, and walk across the neighbor's backyard. And then of course, I segue through the wall. And then I walk over to this 10-acre pasture that's got a fence around it. It's cow pasture. This is rural Midwest, Indiana. And so I climb the fence, and I'm watching myself do this. And I walk out into the field, and I start rising up into the air. And I look up, and there's an orange cigar-shaped cloud that's got to be a mile long. And I keep ascending toward the cloud. We reach the perimeter, or my physical body reaches the perimeter, and then my observer goes into my body, and we go into the cloud. And I wake up in the bed the next morning, and I couldn't wait to go back. I don't know what happened. I was never given, and this happened twice a month for almost 2 years. And I would always
Wow.
have the same thing. Well, I'd wake up with the nosebleed. And so not knowing what this was, it was just cool, right? It was like I was with family that was beyond this world and was so cool to hang with that I was just excited. And I had that remnant. And of course, that was from the time I was 8 to 10. Then at 23, we were getting ready to move to Arizona, and I'm walking through a metaphysical bookstore in Muncie, Indiana, and this book falls off the shelf in front of me. Nobody else around. And the cover's open on the floor, and I walk over, and because I'm curious, right? And I pick it up, and it's Ruth Montgomery's Strangers Among Us. Now, this was 1981, and it was published in 1978. So I turn it over because it's open on the floor. And the first paragraph that I read, paraphrased, says, the most common UFO contactee experience in the Midwest during the late 50s and early 60s was the orange cigar-shaped cloud.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I had not given that a second thought since I was 10, right? Never even thought about it. Now, here's this new information, and I'm like, oh, shit, that explains one heck of a lot. But still, what do you do? Right? What do you do with that once you have that confirmation out of nowhere, right? It's like, okay, here's what you need to know for now. And I was getting ready to move to Arizona. And once I got here, oh man, things just escalate.
Wow, so this is during a time when, there was no internet, right? So there was you couldn't even
Yeah.
think about researching it. It just came to you. So, a lot of people are afraid of these abduction stories. And I was one of those people when I was a bit younger, I was very scared of these extraterrestrial stories of people who claim they have been abducted. And I just kind of was scared because I was like, oh my God, what if they are malevolent, right? And they want to hurt us. But then the more I had my own meditative experience with some of these high frequency beings, okay, because the thing is, a lot of people might not know.
You try to match that.
Excuse me?
I mean, you automatically raise up. And if you don't, you're going to have a fear-based experience.
This is the thing. So I think a lot of people first of all, don't know that not all extraterrestrials have physical bodies. Okay. The other thing is when you can contact them by meditation, or they can come to you in your dreams, or in these out of body experiences, or in physical abductions. But the thing is, I think a lot of these fear-based experiences come from our own prejudice. And I'm not saying, I do think there is some malevolent species out there. I don't know if you would agree with me. I think some of them are genuinely, and I don't want to take that experience away from some people. But I think most of it is.
I don't either. I look at it this way. I'll come at it from a couple of different angles. The first one comes from the Kabbalah, right? You've got 72 names of God, 36 greater, 36 lesser. We see those as angels and demons, usually, right? Well, the fact is, one side delivers the memo, the other side tests you. It wants to lead you to the one, right? So, same thing with the abductions, right? And just happened to have an experience I'll share. It's a little risque. I was meditating in bed one night, and it was just in that liminal space between awake and sleep. And all of a sudden, I feel it's like I wake up on a steel gurney with electrodes lining my sphincter. Now, and I actually woke up laughing, right? I sat straight up, was like, come on, guys, what are you doing? And I started pulling them out. And they were connected to a machine. When I woke up laughing, there were these 3 tall grays that were basically pushed up against the wall. And I didn't understand why at the time, right? But it was the laughter. It was that high energy, right? If I was afraid, they would have anesthetized my body so that it wouldn't hurt me or them. Now, what I realized as I pulled the last electrode out, I felt a sting. And with that sting, I opened my eyes up in my bed. And I'm like, shit, perfect opportunity to have a conversation. How did I not realize that? And here I am back. How do I get back? Right? So I close my eyes and I'm really trying to figure out how to get back. I have no clue. Right? So I run in and I'm in that dark space internally and still in that semi-liminal hypnagogic state, I think it's called. And so I'm in that state and I run into this male being in a shimmering cloak, dark, but it had the shimmers, right? And deep, soft male voice says, "Next time, just relax. We're just trying to tune you up so that we can communicate more easily." And I'm like, what? And so it just so happened that my girlfriend at the time, who was training to be a massage therapist, was taking an anatomy class, and she was studying the nervous system. And we had been talking about the spine and the perineal nerve, which comes out of the tip of the spine and goes into the genitals. Well, if you were an advanced race and there was some plate, now, right, direct connect from the sphincter into the tip of the spine. So if you were an advanced race that was hoping to help adjust vibratory rates, where would you plug in? Right? There's science behind that. Now, that doesn't dissipate or dissuade the trauma of that kind of an experience if you're not prepared for it. Ultimately, though, we live by design. This goes back to that genetic and spiritual design that we carry. That's the paradox that we have to bridge in ourselves in order to have that full God consciousness or the cosmic consciousness that we are capable of. And that's without polarity, right? The non-duality, right? When you can be in that place, you can experience the polarities and yet not be affected by them. You can recognize, yes, they're there, right? You'd be a fool to deny that they aren't, right? Because they are. You experience them, right? And yet there's that unconditional love space that's just pure energy that you can reside in and watch that and then make better choices as to how to navigate what you once believed was chaos.
And that's where the clarity comes in, out of the chaos. I think you were kind of like, I guess it sounds like your whole life you've had these experiences, these, I would say, spiritual and extraterrestrial. You know, you had a lot of time to do this and go through the training, I guess, to understand these things. But, you know, I want to ask you, for everyone who's watching, who's like, this is bullshit, he's crazy, there's no extraterrestrials, there's no such thing as a spirit. What do you tell these skeptics about this?
Okay. Why argue? As I said before, your own direct experience is your truth. It does not matter what anybody else tries to tell you your truth is.
Yes. I always like to also go at it from the angle of what is reality, because physicists are not, you know, I mean, like, no scientist actually can really align on this. What reality is? Is it what we experience?
I disagree. I had a quantum biologist that I spoke with recently on my podcast, and he's in total agreement with it. He even had his own spiritual experience. You know, the thing about these things is if you just look at it simply and you acknowledge what you sense and feel, and you question what you sense and feel, right? Why? What's going on? And you look around, you observe what's going on externally as well as internally. And that's a real disciplined type of lifestyle that sometimes take years to develop. I was privy to it young. So as I said, blessing or curse, I don't know. You know, there was 45 no listening until COVID hit. And I told my wife, who's from the Soviet Union originally, I said, when we went on lockdown here in Arizona, I said, I really hope this obsession on self-hygiene and sequestration gets people to turn inward and start self-examining what they truly believe in, what evidence they can find of that, how they want to live their lives along with that, and then how they can actually do something about that. Not the fear-based stuff, right? How they can actually be the dream, theirs, right? So in that process, there were many who did, and there were virtual groups that started forming online, people talking to each other about, hey, let's find some solutions to this because the rest of it's just bullshit, right? And so we need to figure out how to work together collectively to create a new normal that works for everybody. And that's what's in process now. AI has been a great boon to that. It's brought out the factor of this interesting terminology, the recursive function. Do you know what that is?
No, explain.
Well, it came out of computers, right? And in AI, a recursive function is a system that queries itself for problem solving. What do we do? Right? We have this internal dialogue going on all the time that we're questioning stuff, right? We just don't know how to dissolve into nothingness, which is that same energy, right? The unconditional love space from which everything comes. But you got to be able to dissolve, get your ego out of the way, get yourself out of the way. And, Urban Laszlo calls it the higher self. So what you want to do is open up that channel back to source, right? That is specific to you, right? You have infinite intelligence available to you about you.
Yes.
When you develop that, then you can begin to have that information about others because you know yourself well enough to see it in others.
Yes, and I just wanted to everything you're saying is so important. I hope people can really take it in. But what I wanted to say about what I said earlier is if you experience something, it's valid, it's real to you. And so I think it almost doesn't matter what objective reality is. I mean, it does matter for the people who want to really know and go out of body and understand all of these big things. But I always try to bring it back to our own personal experience and day-to-day life. What can we do in our day-to-day life to move towards a healthier, happier life, right? I want everyone who's watching to lead, everyone actually in the world to lead the happiest life they can, because this is all the same thing. It's everything that these spiritual teachers and that Zen is talking about right now. It's the same message. It's the same thing. It's love yourself.
We all say the same thing. We live differently, right? Based on our experience.
Exactly. And it's okay to have these experiences because I feel like there's a lot of shame around it sometimes. I mean,
Oh, well, yeah. People think we're, whacked out, weird, crazy, insane.
Yeah.
And they talk like that. I mean, back when I was growing up, I spent some time in a psych ward because my parents didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And instead of doc trying to listen to me to help me figure out me, I was diagnosed with DSM-4. It's now the DSM-5, I think, which is this huge book that has all the diagnoses in. So they go through and they figure out how to label you and then how to drug you accordingly. Well, I was labeled a manic depressive, paranoid schizophrenic, right? Every label you can imagine.
Yeah.
And given 2,000 micrograms of Thorazine a day, 4 different doses. And not 2,000 apiece, but 500 4 times a day. And based on that, I should have been a lump in the corner, probably drooling. Did it happen? No. I was up playing ping pong, beating the male nurses. So it had no effect on my physical dexterity. And they couldn't figure that out because according to their book, that drug should have made me a lump, at least temporarily, right? Well, it wasn't until I figured out what to say to the doc, which is what he wanted to hear from me, that proved him right, and then allowed that healing process to take place. He told my parents finally, he says, I wasn't sure he's ever going to come out of it. It's like a miracle cure. He actually, admitted things. And it was all truth that he wanted to hear, which is bullshit to me, had nothing to do with what was going on with me. I just wanted help in trying to figure out what all, these inner and outer world things that were happening to me, because I had
Yes.
nobody.
Yeah. That
And I
must have
learned
been. Yeah.
others in the psych ward were having the same kind of thing happen. So the mental health system is broken
Yes.
severely.
So broken. And just to interject right there, I mean, right now they are finally realizing in the mental health field that, for example, schizophrenics have completely different experiences according to which culture they were brought up in. So, for example, in the US, you will see more people who have who are, labeled as schizophrenics, have more of these paranoid, and people are against them and trying to kill them, and I don't know, FBI stuff. But then in other cultures, it's less painful to some schizophrenics because there's less stigma around it. So you can see how much the culture and this really unhealthy mental health stigma, these stigmata really
Well,
shape
that has
the
to do with
people.
genetics too, right? Rupert Sheldrake got into the memes and creodes that are based in cultures, right? So cultures that are 1,000 years old or so, thousands of years old, have these embedded thought forms at a genetic level. And so these are coming up for review now because we realize all this disturbance, all these wars, all this disagreement, right? We live on one planet. We're actually one society. We just haven't elevated ourselves to that place yet. We breathe one air. We have the same water, different lands, but still it's all connected. And we keep thinking that we can circumvent natural laws and bend things to our will, which, in the industrial age, that had a certain, we didn't know the effects that the industrial age would cause, right? We just thought the earth would heal itself automatically. We didn't realize what the long-term effects would be. Scientists started saying, in the 60s to the oil companies, hey, we got to be careful because we're seeing these things and this is what's happening. And of course, they were silenced, and just like the tobacco industry. And yet this was still going on. So this information was available then. It wasn't well liked because we've lived as a profit over people and planet society as opposed to a people and planet over profit society, which is what we're evolving to.
Yes, but I feel like the systems have to break down almost because they are so rotten that it's just so painful. And I think we're going to go through so much pain in the process. And at the same time, I want to be hopeful and I want to give people hope because you mentioned COVID earlier, but I think this is kind of what happened with a lot of people. When we say we have a mental health crisis, I think even though it's extremely painful and I have some personal experiences there, the pain that you're feeling should be hopefully the biggest catalyst for you to heal. And sadly, I think a lot of people only change once they are in such an intense state of fear that there's no other way but to heal or to die. So you make that choice. Do you want to die? I mean, this is very grotesque, but you have the choice to end your
It really
life.
is no death. The death is death to self, right? You
Yeah.
die to yourself every moment. It's like, let's say, go back to the happy place, right?
Yes.
So you're at work. You're working with, don't care what industry, you're working with a team of people, right? You go into work and one day you feel this disturbed energy in the team meeting and you can't figure it out, but there's a problem trying to be solved and there's egos getting in the way of it being solved, right? So what can you do? Well, you can sit there and acknowledge what you see and sense, first of all, and then you can intend to serve it better. and then just shut up and wait for the opportunity, you'll have something from within you that will prompt you to say something that moves it in a direction that takes it out of the cacophony and moves it towards clarity. It's amazing how it works. And I guarantee you, you listeners, if you run into those situations, try it. Rather than getting engaged with the conversation immediately and trying to give your opinions, hold off. Just hit the pause button. I guarantee you, you'll be able to affect a change for the positive in that situation just by doing that little process, becoming more aware, see that there's a disturbance, question yourself, okay, what's going on? What can I do to assist it personally? And then waiting for that movement from within. James Redfield wrote a book called The Celestine Prophecy. That's number 3 of the insights. Wait until what is inside of you wants to come out rather than speaking from your head.
This is, okay, guys, what Zen is talking about this whole time, I feel like you're talking about how to connect to the source, God, within us all. So it's all about
Absolutely.
coming to your true self. Like when I sometimes sit with people, I've done like healing sessions with people. I'm not trained to do this. I just have a lot of experience. So some of my close friends, I kind of help them to heal some things. So what often happens is, especially in the Western world, is people are so much in their heads that when I ask them something, the first thing that comes out is, I don't know. And I'm always like, okay, let's just imagine you're speaking from the heart place right now. You know the answer. It's gonna come. Yes. But it's difficult to lead people back to themselves and their own truth. And so I love how you talk about this.
If you're not trained or have the experience in doing it, for a time as you're learning, it's just experimentation. You don't know what's going to happen. The fact is that you're willing to make a choice to try and make it better.
Yes.
By giving your own energy to it.
Yeah, it's also kind of I hope that people can see that what you're saying, Zen, is also that the more you are yourself and connected with your true self, who you really are, the more you're also serving the community automatically. So this is kind of something, we talked about purpose earlier, and I'm someone, I still have like a day job and, things I do in the world, in the physical world, I'd say, but this is my real...
We're not limited to what we can do.
Yes, but this is what I'm doing right now with you is where my purpose really lies, I feel, because this is when I'm really there. I'm in the moment. I'm so excited to talk to you. I have had so many amazing guests.
Water.
Yeah, and
that comes from...
That comes from what?
The share water phrase. It comes from Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land. Heinlein. Beautiful book. It's about the experience of the Martian on Earth and how he learns to grapple with society. But it's a sharing of energy, right? When you can have conversations of this kind, it actually ripples through the Thought-Mosphere, right? Because we're all connected. The interconnectivity, quantum physics said we live in the field, right? So we create a sense of quantum entanglement at that level for people who are seeking. They're going to find something.
Yes, and I always feel like this is going also back to when you ask, the answer will be given. I feel like everybody who's watching this video right now, you were meant to see it because you are seeing it right now. So there is a message for you here, whatever it is. Sometimes it's not the obvious.
Right.
Yeah, it's
there are no coincidences.
Yeah.
And if you say if they see the bottom line, if what I say resonates, I'm doing my job.
I love that so
if it
much.
resonates, that's what you sense. It's beyond your thinking. You may not understand why it resonates with you yet. It just may make sense. Right?
Yes.
That individual experience that is quantified by all the different things that are in your life, all the threads of emotion that you have attached to the outcomes that you hope to have, right? When you can bring that back into yourself, that point of light that's within you. If you think about electromagnetic spectrum, right? You've seen the graphics of the torus, right? The electromagnetic fields that are around people, right?
Yes.
They're called a torus, right? It's like constantly turning in on itself in one direction and also turning out. So there's bidirectional energy flowing. Well, at the center of that, in the center of your being, is that point of light, right? That's the center of all of it. And there's scientists that have even been talking about this on YouTube. I've seen several of them. There's one particular video about Tesla's numbers at 369, I think it is, um, in the process of showing that torus around a person. It actually shows that point of light flashing. So I thought that was, wow, they finally got it, right? Um, so
Wow.
those types of things are, they're there for us to discover, right? Again, it falls back to the curious. If you want to push it away, that's fine. It's going to persist until you finally say, okay, what's this about?
Yes.
And then you sit up long enough to listen. It's one thing to ask the question. It's quite another to have the discipline to wait for the answer. Because oftentimes we try to answer things with what we know, right?
Yeah.
That's our natural proclivity. We try to answer stuff immediately. Well, we wouldn't be able to if we had the question for some reason. That means we can't figure it out. Even though we try from all kinds of different angles, something's not fitting. So when you ask the question and you remain quiet, hit the pause button, right? It may take a moment. It may take 10 minutes. It may take a day. It may take a week, a month, a year. It may take a lifetime for that question to be answered, depending on the level of the question.
Yes. And my question right now, going back to this, what I said earlier about what I'm doing right now, is I feel
Yeah.
like if something feels right and you're in the flow, then that is part of your purpose. Do you think I'm right there, or do you have anything to add?
At least in that moment, absolutely. Right? Because there's
Yeah.
ancillary. Remember, there's many threads that are a cord that's floating around and spiraling around in this thought-mosphere that is manifesting a reality for you. And when you can recognize that, it's a lot easier to walk through it and recognize those thoughts, the incremental growth spurts that you have. A lot of folks, myself included, will go through stuff and they'll reach a pivotal point and they'll be able to look back and something will happen, like the domino effect when I opened that book up, right, or turned the book over and read the paragraph, right? That was like a domino effect in tying all these points of data together and making an evo leap in awareness and understanding as a result.
Yes. Yes, I love it. We're almost an hour. Do
Oh,
we
you
still have a bit of
are
time?
so blessed to have these kinds of things happening at your stage in life. I got to tell you, right? Because for me, at my age, when I was your age, oblivious, there was not any openings. I said, 45 years waiting for COVID to happen. I actually wasn't waiting, but when it did, it opened the door for this new awareness to begin coming to the surface and more people talking about it. Until that time, I felt like a lone avenger, right?
My God, it must have been so painful. I had AJ Parr on the show. I don't know if you know him. He's a journalism in NDE, near-death experience, and he researches that. And he had an experience. He's 64 now. I think he had an experience 32 years ago, so a long time ago. And at the time, again, he felt so lonely. He had nobody to talk about this. So this is the good thing about
Absolutely.
the era that we're in
Well, the
right now.
spiritual path is a lonely one. Bottom
Yeah.
line, nobody's going to know except you,
Yes.
unless you open your mouth, you talk to people, and you find someone that you can open up to
Yeah.
and have conversations with, so that you can hear yourself talk. This is the thing about counseling, right? Questions they ask are great. Where you really get the healing is when you can hear yourself talk and you're observing it and analyzing yourself in the process. That gives you, that's that observer that can hear the speech and go, it doesn't quite feel right, right? And you get those inklings in the process. And sometimes you still continue the thinking because that's your pattern behavior. Once you reach that point where, okay, I got to change this pattern. I don't know how I'm going to do it, and then I got to do it. And there will be an opportunity that presents itself.
Yes,
Guaranteed.
it all works out, guys. But I didn't know this was going to be an extraterrestrial conversation, but I'm so intrigued. So I want to go a little bit.
I'm not going to talk about that.
I just think it's so fascinating, and a lot of people, they didn't have this, personal experience with the other races out there. I want to circle back a bit. So you had these experiences since you were a little child, and then you were kind of deemed by society as crazy. So then you kind of get out of the I guess the mental whatever hospital.
I had to go hide.
What?
Right? I had to hide for a while because I was afraid if I was going to talk about what my experience is that I'd be back in the hospital. I didn't want to go there.
So then after, so into your adulthood, do I understand correctly that you kept on having these experiences with extraterrestrials?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So here you are, going through doing these different kinds of jobs, but still having all of these experiences, these metaphysical, I guess, experiences throughout your life.
Yeah,
and
they were weaving around. They never stopped. Still haven't.
And so right now, still, are you telling me you're still being abducted?
Oh, no. That only happened when I was a kid, and then I got the refresher course with the anal probes, right? And the electrodes. And, it's kind of funny when you think about it. Granted, we have, anytime genitals comes up, people just go, oh, I don't want to talk about that. But it's part of us. It's natural.
Yeah.
Right? Why can't we talk about our anatomy without feeling like we're stupid or immature or somehow wrong for doing so? That's religion that's done that. Now, if we were open enough to just be honest and open, it'd be a much different story. And yes, those events happened. However, the higher purpose of that is a different strand, if you will, that is intended to prepare us for open contact.
Yes,
so
everybody's talking about it. Tell us.
Yeah, all of these solar contracts, right? Because before we come here, we make agreements, right? We come here, the agreements are still in place, whether we realize it or not. And so certain things are going to happen, whether we're ready or not. Here we go, right?
Yes.
So when those kinds of things happen and you're prepared, completely different story than when you're ill prepared. That's usually the fear-based experiences. And because when you can't raise your energy, it's constricted. Well, why is it constricted? Fear, right? Anytime you fear anything, your energy gets constricted and you shut yourself off, right? If you can go into that place, just breathe for a moment, relax, allow yourself to drift up to that vibratory rate, and you're going to be able to sense it. It'll be a very high-pitched sensation in your body. Let that be a sign that it's cool. It's okay. I can let go. I'm safe. Nothing's going to happen except some really cool shit.
So do you agree? A lot of people in the spiritual field, including Bashar and other people who channel extraterrestrials, are saying open contact is coming very soon, maybe within the next 2 years. Do you kind of agree with that?
I am unsure. Reason being, now it's possible because the escalation in AI is pushing the rest of us to evolve quicker. Right? So that is possible. However, based on what Jose had said in our conversations, we've got till 2037 before that window between ages closes. So we've got another 12 years to adjust. Now, I would say sometime during that, there's a high likelihood that there will be some open contact. I would caution the obsession on determining when that will happen.
Yes.
And instead turn that on, okay, what do I need to do to participate at the level I'm capable of in order to help it happen sooner?
Yes, and I think most people are not prepared for that kind of stuff. I mean, we still have racism going on in our own race, and the way
the human race is so disappointing in my view now, and has been for a long time, my entire life. It's like, come on, guys, what are you, idiots? Right? Can't this just, it makes so much sense so simply when you can begin to look at things and analyze them and look for references rather than try to put your own belief system over the top of it and claim it to be true. That's not experience, that's a belief. So in order to experience, you often have to suspend your belief system. I would even say, get rid of it. Figure out an experience system instead.
Yes. Draw from your own experiences instead of these dogmatic beliefs that are I always say, you know, there's only two energies in the world. To put it really simply, it's just love or fear. And so at any moment you're acting out of one out of them, right? So sometimes when you're in this very high stress, high fear, just stop for a moment and ask yourself, what am I acting out of right now? And of course you'll be finding that you're acting out of fear. So, you know, we can shift in each moment. And I think that's really important. And so, yeah, I loved having you on, Zen.
But what you're talking about comes out of what's called the law of one.
Yes.
And that came out of these fear or love, right? Service to self, service to others. Well, what we don't realize in that polarity paradigm is that service to self is ultimately service to others.
Exactly. I mean, if the more I love myself, the more I'm able and capable to love others. The more I am happy, the more I'm able to help. And
you got to love yourself first. Self-love is not a bad thing.
Exactly.
Right? We think it's very hedonistic. There are a lot of people who say, "Wow, you're just full of yourself." That's not what it means.
No, exactly.
That means you honor your boundaries, what you feel appropriate, what you feel inappropriate. You need to speak what those are. You need to say, hey, wait a minute, you just kind of, you went to a place that really didn't feel good. And I know you may not have wanted to go there, but I felt this way when you did, because you got to claim how you feel, right? You can't make somebody else responsible for how you feel. That's your choice. And only your choice. Others may try to get you to feel certain ways, manipulate you to do so. Howard Bloom wrote a great book called The Lucifer Principle. And what he says that Howard Bloom's one of the world's greatest minds, as acknowledged of that. He's written many books. This one, The Lucifer Principle, basically says that it's a scientific view of history of how populations were manipulated by one or a few people who told lies and had control of the media stream, whether it be a town crier or the internet. And they told the lies so effectively that they got people to believe them. And that's happened throughout history. Now, how do we do with that? What do we recognize? Again, cause for curiosity, right? You hear something, question it. It's okay. You can question it internally. You can even question it externally. You can look for references that either validate or negate. And then get that a little deeper. Now, I would caution the outer use. However, the outer is going to corroborate what you already know to be true inside.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I always say, everyone has an agenda. This is not conspiracy theory, People are doing things for a specific reason, but what is that reason? And it's okay to question that, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Question. Well, what here? What do you hope to get out of this? What's the agenda? You know, these are questions you can ask yourself internally as you're viewing something, and you'll get data points to be able to navigate through that.
yes, and ultimately you'll find another truth about yourself, which I'm lately really realizing that the biggest gift in life is to be truly who you are, because we are all so different. And so self-questioning and questioning other things is so important in becoming, to either double down on what you already knew to be true for you yourself, or to change your belief or change your opinion on something. So I think it always drives us, you know, closer to who we are.
Willing to think differently for a little bit. You may go back to your original thinking. That's okay,
Yes.
right? Nobody's saying you're right or wrong. It's not about being right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's about being in harmony with yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Zen. This was wonderful. In the end of each episode, I try to do a rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you a few tiny questions, and I want you to answer really, really shortly, maybe in a sentence or in a word. And so the first question, let's see if it's possible. First question I have for you is, what is the most overrated spiritual cliche that you do not agree with?
Really have none. I apologize. Nothing comes to mind right away. You know, I sarcastically, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter because there is no matter.
Okay. What's a book that completely changed your life? You
There
have
have
so
been
many.
several. One that probably has given me the greatest curiosity is the Urantia book.
Which one?
The Urantia book is a 2,000 page, originally it was 2,000 pages, 2,200 on rice paper, and it was a channeled work that came through a farmer in the Midwest in the 20s and wasn't compiled until the mid 50s into this book. And it describes from various perspectives and beings, it describes the spiritual and the material hierarchy of creation.
Wonderful. I have to look that one up. I mean, that sounds crazy though, 2,000 pages. I don't know if I can commit to that, but you are very
Yeah,
well read.
um, several times. It's an amazing book. Really heady.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you. And then what's what's the first thing you do in the morning?
50 push-ups.
What? That's crazy. Wow.
Well, out of bed, very first thing I do a child's pose, and then I do 50 push-ups.
Oh, I love that. And then the last question I have for you is, what would you want everyone, all of my viewers, and you know, if you share this, all of your viewers, what would you want people to basically take with them after this episode?
Learn how to love and be loved.
Yes. Thank you, Zen. This was wonderful. You were such a storyteller, and I had a blast listening. Thank you so much.
And
It means a lot.
And we're across the pond, and it's just been wonderful. It shows you how the virtual space can be so connected.
Yes, I love it. I'm in Japan, you're in Arizona. We're connected. We're talking at the same moment in time. Time is anyways. It's another, and that's another topic. But I'm just so happy that you were on, you know, today, and I'm so glad you came. And this was just, I had a blast, and I love how the
wonderful joy.
Thank you. And I think the conversation went like everywhere, but there was a thread that was leading through it. And
They usually do.
Yes.
And you just navigated it extremely well. You had wonderful questions. You were very navigable, right? You were paying attention, asking great questions, and providing your own corroboration on a lot of it, as much as you could.
Yes, thank you so much. I love giving my own 2 cents because I think we have a conversation, not an interview. That's kind of how I lead my
conversations are reciprocal, right? You're both giving.
Yes.
And you're both receiving.
Yes, and I learned so much today again. I have to look some things up after this. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Zen.
been my pleasure.
Thank you guys so much for watching this week's episode of the Kotodama Podcast. I had a blast. I hope you guys also enjoyed this type of deep, extraterrestrial, all over the place, spiritual, deep truths about life kind of topics. And if you liked this, guys, it helps a lot if you subscribe, like, and share. I love reading comments. I really mean that. Okay, so please tell me in the comments below what you thought about this episode, or if there's anything you want to give, you want to say. And everything about Zen will be in the description below. And thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.